Welcome to Hidden Gem or Hidden Trash. Today we'll take a look at 4 modern RPGs. One of them is an indie and the other 3 are Japanese. Are they worth your time or should they be with the trash? We're about to find out, so let's begin. Our first contender is Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. No, it's not the upcoming action RPG. This is a fighting game, but it includes an RPG. Oh yeah, 2 games in one. So we're gonna find out if that RPG is Hidden Gem or Hidden Trash. First, the graphic engine of this RPG, its interface and its controls all come from the fighting game itself. Remember Code of Princess in episode 4? Well, this is similar as its combat is a 2D beat 'em up. But first, the story. Waves of chaos are twisting the world. Adventurer Gran and his friends need to find out the cause and put a stop to it. This game actually follows somewhat the anime series released a few years ago. It might help watching it to understand more about the characters in the story. Basically, you'll go through small stages with Gran at first to learn the basics, fighting rounds against a few enemies coming from left and right. Little by little, other playable characters will join you as the story advances. You can play as any and take an additional ally in battle controlled by the AI. Every character excels in one element, but they can equip from a variety of weapons to use during battle. Strangely though, no matter what you equip, their animation will always show their default designed weapon. So, like I said, you'll fight your way through different areas and dungeons you select from the overworld map. Every one of them leads to an epic boss fight, but there are also some mid bosses here and there. Controls are different for every character, but they can all build up combos by trying different combinations with the buttons. They all have a specific action and can guard to reduce damage, and of course they can execute a badass special attack. It's no simple button masher, however, you gotta learn how to control each character properly. Fighting enemies and bosses gives you items, money, and experience, but only the 2 characters you took to the fight will earn experience. Cutscenes and dialogue will play out during every stage per episode. It's a good plot, slowly getting more and more interesting. So the positive features are, it's 2 games in one! Amazing combat, great pacing, interesting story. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it has fantastic music and graphics. There are some bad things here and there. First and foremost, it's quite a short RPG. You can beat it in about 10 hours or so, perhaps more if you wanna grind, but that's okay, the length shouldn't be a problem, right? And I feel if the game was much longer, it would just be very repetitive and get tedious. The one really bad thing here is the weapon system. Every time you finish a stage, you'll get a few weapons in some kind of randomizer. This is not a gacha game at all, obviously, but that little mechanic feels like one, and you get a lot of weapons, which makes it hard to decide which ones to use, and the large majority of these weapons are of no use at all. The game recommends you which element the boss will be weak against before you enter the episode, so that helps you decide which one to equip, but if all of them are low level or decrease important stats, you will underperform in battle. It's just convoluted and unnecessarily complicated. I get it, they wanted to add as many RPG elements as possible, but this just felt kind of overwhelming. So the negatives are convoluted weapon system and a gameplay mechanic that feels like a gacha game. And that's it! Those things honestly don't affect the enjoyment that much, and hell, you might find them appealing or interesting. This is an excellent game! I praise the developers for including it along a fighting game, and if you're a fan of fighters, of course this is 100% worth playing or owning. Absolutely a must play here, so obviously I deem this game as a big hidden gem. Our next contender is Dokapon Kingdom. I put quotation marks in the title because this is not a modern RPG, instead, it's a modern remaster that was just released a few days ago on the Switch. Is it good or even better than the original? Let's find out. Released on the PS2 and later ported to the Wii in 2008, this is actually a hybrid. It mixes a board game a la Mario Party and a turn-based RPG. This remaster is based on the Wii version. Developed by Sting Entertainment, Dokapon Kingdom lets you choose a single-player mode, but also both an offline or online multiplayer one. Having different features to play what is actually a party game is a really good start. Graphics look really good for a remaster and the game runs smoothly on the Switch. It's an exclusive on the Switch, by the way, so far as of the making of this video, with barely any technical issues. You control one male or female character with only 4 jobs available. Your stats will obviously depend on what you choose. If you go to select the turn order of all participants, you can either play by yourself, against up to 3 other characters controlled by other players, or the computer. Now, the game has a story. You're supposed to save the kingdom from demons by order of the king, and if you win, you become rich. Or you can get married to the princess if you want to. So once your turn comes up, you use a spinner to see how many times you'll move in any direction available. Landing on an item spot, for example, triggers another spinner to determine which item you'll get. Same with spells and money. Landing on a random spot will trigger a battle against a monster. You'll have to choose fast to determine who'll start and a menu will appear. Each action counters the other, but it's hard to know what the enemy will choose. I usually go with attack if I get the first turn or defend if I don't. If you defeat the enemy, you'll win experience and money. If you don't, you lose a turn and will have to defeat that monster on your next one. If you land on a spot with another character, you'll also enter a battle with them. Eventually, you'll get to the next stages where shops are available so you can buy weapons, armor, or items. You will also have the chance to fight strong monsters to liberate small towns of the kingdom. That'll net you more points. So the positives of this game are as follows. Fun multiplayer features, very unique ideas, mixing a party game with an RPG, good looking remaster, it didn't insult the original, and addictive gameplay mechanics. Now let's discuss the negative. This is a luck-based game, so in multiplayer it can get somewhat irritating to do poorly against your friends or online folks, but let me tell you that the single-player mode is by far the worst. Playing against the computer is as nerve-wracking as you're probably wondering. The AI is quite cheap, and there's always at least one enemy character who will be far luckier than you. I tried 2 different runs against the computer and performed embarrassingly. Plus, the game's kinda low budget, which means there's not much to do, so it gets very repetitive and therefore boring playing by yourself. Another thing is that the mixing of board game with RPG, while very unique, it's also kinda misleading. Honestly, it just doesn't feel like an RPG at all. I'd say it's 90% a party game and 10% RPG. So the whole purpose of this game is to play against a real person, not the computer. It's a competitive playthrough, not a role-playing adventure, but taking that into consideration, I'd say it did a good job as the board game genre than anything else. So the negatives are: frustrating single-player mode, it can get very repetitive, and it's not really an RPG. Overall, I still believe Duck Upon Kingdom is a fun game, but only if you play it with somebody else. At least one more person, the more the merrier. Also, if you play it keeping in mind you're not really playing an RPG. But multiplayer can be a blast, of course. So with that said, I deem this remaster as a hidden gem. Coming right up is Azure Saga Pathfinder, an indie RPG developed by Indonesian studios Mass Hive Media and Toge Productions. So how is this collaboration between 2 small studios? Let's take a look. The game's heavily inspired by Star Ocean. Traveling through space, Sync and his android friend Noid land on an underdeveloped planet with a medieval setting. The first thing you notice is the character design. The art style for them is beautiful. I honestly dig it, but the game's graphics are simple, low budget 3D in an isometric view. So the main characters will start their adventure trying to find Sync's father, a way to help this planet, and so on. You got your basic traditional RPG mechanics like town exploration, shops, crafting, magic system, etc. You'll be sent into overworld areas or sometimes dungeons with puzzles. The type where you move an object or find this key to open this door over there, you know the drill. Combat is played in turns. Enemies will be either hollow type with pretty much undead monsters or others. The equipment system allows you to suck at jewels to increase stats, but also to create effects that can make characters strong against these hollow monsters, for example. It's good and it's entertaining, especially since slowly during battle you start building up a fury bar, which gives you the option to execute a powerful attack. So the positives are as follows. It's a Star Ocean inspired game, combat is decent, and character art is beautiful. On the negative side, here's the thing. You've been seeing it for the past minute or so. You can tell right away it just looks generic as hell, and the in-game graphics resemble a mobile game. So is nearly every single mechanic, as classic as traditional, but also as uninspiring as it can get. It honestly feels like one of those Kemco RPGs, but perhaps more forgettable. It's just one of those thousands of indie RPGs inspired by the classics that are so unmemorable. The problem is that there's just way too many of those nowadays, so it's hard to stand out. And Azure Saga stands out in almost nothing. Balancing issues are also there, just not as ridiculous as in other indie RPGs. Plus, the economy system is pretty bad. You'll be grinding a lot just so you can buy the next piece of armor. Puzzles feel mediocre, just like its exploration, and the overall interface of the game can feel clunky. Controlling your character while moving around feels off. So the negatives are boring story, boring gameplay, mobile-like graphics, mediocre interface, and it's just a copy of a copy of a copy. It's just a generic RPG, guys. Very generic, dare I say. I'm not sure if it was released first for phones and later ported for consoles, because it does feel exactly that way, and if that's the case, it should have stayed on the mobile market. I can think of at least 10 Kemco RPGs that are more enjoyable than this. Therefore, I deem this game as hidden trash. Our last contender is Magmalord, a spiritual successor of Summon Night Swordcraft story developed by Felistella, a studio that some of the ex-employees of Flightplan created. I love the first Swordcraft story, so obviously I was the target audience for this. Let's see if it lived up to the name. On the positive side, Magmalord retains the 2D action battle system seen in its beautiful predecessors, so we might be off to a good start here. You play as a male or female demon named Kildisark. They've been stripped down of their overworld powers and get sent into a town in need. To regain your demon powers back, you'll need to help the town and develop different relationships with other characters. Actually, this is a response-based RPG where your reactions or choices mold your character's personality and affect the story. The endings depend on who you bonded with the most while dating. Now, it may feel like a visual novel, but nope. It can get excessive with dialogue sometimes, but not as overwhelming as one of those games. It's a fun comedy, but you can make it even funnier with dialogue choices. I mean, you can be evil if you want to. I also like the character art. As an action RPG, you'll be sent on different quests, usually about finding items, defeating a boss, or merely advancing through the story. You can only take one partner character with you per mission, and once you do, you can't change it. Your partner will do most of the fighting, but they can all switch between the three main weapons: spear, sword, and axe. Every enemy is weak to one of those, so you'll have to switch constantly during battle. Sounds stressful, and it kinda is, but it's also what makes combat more engaging and fun. Your character, the Demon Lord, can only join in battle, replacing the partner if that burst bar fills up. You'll be overpowered, still bound by the weapon triangle system, but it'll be a blast nonetheless. Here are the positives: awesome combat in 2D, engaging weapon system, interesting choice system in the story, neat character art, and well, you can be evil! I mean, if you want to, that is, regularly choosing edgy or selfish replies during dialogue. The negatives, here we go. It's low budget, as you can see, but that doesn't always mean bad. It just means in-game graphics look generic and the interface is weird. Controlling characters is fine, don't worry, both in and out of combat, but the collision detection can be weird, especially when exploring. This isn't a difficult game though, it's balanced, so that's cool, but sometimes you'll get confused by the weapon triangle system and die. It can get frustrating, that's all I'm saying. Story is kinda lame, to be honest. I said it was a funny comedy, and it is, but it's also kinda cringy and very tropey. Almost every modern cliché you can imagine is here, and every character trope joins your party. I wish you could say you won't play this for the story, cause you won't, but it can have some exhausting scenes with dialogue that's straight up boring. So the story isn't bad, but it could have been handled better. It's also a menu-based game, your only control is during exploration and combat, the rest is done by menus. There's also a convoluted weapon crafting system and forgettable equipment features with skills that I just felt were just kinda there. But anyway, the negatives are uninteresting story, full of cliches, mediocre in-game graphics, repetitive gameplay, and the crafting system that is just kinda there. Yeah, this is kind of a mixed bag. Did it live up to those GBA games from Summon Night? I'd say no, but with their budget and production values, Felistella did what they could. I really do believe its positives outweighed a little bit its negatives. It's a fun game, but just don't expect too much out of it. Therefore, and barely, I deem this game as a hidden gem. Alright, those were the 4 contenders of today's video, 3 JRPGs and 1 indie. Or in a sense, Magmalord could also be considered as an indie, but what the hell do I know. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!